What is going on, Lucid fans? Welcome back to Financial Journey. So ever since post Q2 earnings came out, a lot of people are now talking about bankruptcy, saying that Lucid is on its way to bankruptcy, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to break it down for you. Is it actually possible? What would be the circumstances where we should be a little bit more fearful? A lot of different things. So before I get into any of that though, making sure you guys hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I greatly appreciate that. With that though, let's get right to it. So when it comes down to this video, it is going to be very financial based, because obviously that is one of the biggest criterias. So I'm going to go through all of that. If you do have any questions, put it in the comments below and I can definitely address that. But first off, you need to look at the cash and assets and things like that. So as far as cash and short-term investments, they have 4.2 billion, and that was based on the previous earnings, which was last week. And the breakdown of that is 3.1 billion for cash and equivalents, and short-term investments 1.1 billion. So again, that's going to play a little bit more importance when I break the rest down. So looking right here, cash from operations, you want to ultimately know and find out how much Lucid is actually losing on a quarter-by-quarter basis, how much is projected to lose, and you want to look at the operations for that. So when it comes down to the recent earnings on Q2, it was 513.6 million. That's how much they lost from operations. Q1 was 494.6. The projected on how things are going for the tail end of the year, for the full year for 2022, it's going to be 1.6 billion. Of course, it could get a little bit more worse, better, give or take, probably around 10-15% from that as a little bit more of a variance, but still, assuming this is correct, 1.6 billion. This is where in previous earnings, if they continue this trajectory, they have definitely reiterated many times that mid-2023 is when they will potentially run out of money, or they call it technically they have sufficient amount of cash until mid-2023, which in reality, if they do continue this projection on how they are actually going, then they should be good until Q3 2023 as far as cash, which is, like I said, the 3.1 billion that they have. So again, it's one of those things that potentially they have sufficient amount of cash to run all of their operations, continue how they are actually going until Q3 2023. Keep in mind though, whoever is talking about bankruptcy clearly does not know actual anything about a business, because given the circumstances, worst case scenario, let's say we go down to $10 for instance. Well, guess what? Lucid can dilute. They can offer shares to the general public through their primary market. And in general though, yes, that would cause a little bit more dilution, but it would give Lucid more assets, more cash. And that is what they want at the end of the day. So again, worst case scenario, if nothing goes Lucid's way, then they could still dilute. And they can do that many times before they actually run out of capital. Because keep in mind, they are on the NASDAQ. So they just basically have to stay above $1, which I think given the circumstances is very likely. Even if they dilute 10 different instances, they probably still will be over $1. My own 2 cents. I'm not a financial advisor either, so do your own due diligence at the end of the day. So anyone who is talking about bankruptcy clearly does not know the fundamentals of a business and how generally they make money. So that's just my own 2 cents on all of that. But given the circumstances, we want to know about some capital things that's coming up, because like I said, when it comes down to assets, yeah, that's all fine and dandy, but you also want to look at the debt. Looking right here as far as, again, on the annual basis, the breakdown of market cap is right here. Cash and short-term investments, which I just went over, which combined is 4.2 billion. Total debt is 2.2 billion. So of that debt, 2 billion is low-cost financing, 1.25% until 2026, I believe. So in reality, this is a little bit more overinflated. Keep in mind though, there was another thing that will be coming down the pipeline given the circumstances, and that is Saudi Arabia. So Lucid secured 3.4 billion in incentives and funding for the Saudi Arabia facility. So that is a very big deal. And the breakdown of this, it shows that it has to be paid within 15 years. So most likely you'll see it a little bit more staggered in a laddered approach when it comes down to on the actual financing. So you'll see a little bit more debt in the future, but again, it's one of those same circumstances that is very low cost. If not, I don't believe that there is any actual interest charges on that. So this is provided by Saudi Arabia. So again, a little bit more of an incentive for them to move forward and to complete the Saudi Arabia facility. So yes, even in this future, potentially Lucid will be getting a little bit more debt, but when it comes to it though, though, we can still dilute, still technically far from bankruptcy. So even aside from us only having directly amount of cash up until Q3 2023, we still could dilute. And I keep bringing this up because that is a very important factor that seems to be kind of being neglected at the end of the day. And worst case scenario, I did allude to this in a previous video when I talked on bankruptcy. A lot of people talk on technically if Lucid was to get into a very bad sticky scenario, let's say nothing absolutely goes Lucid's way, we're burning so much cash, well, guess what? Our big brother, the PIF, is going to cover us. And in case you guys don't know, Lucid does have a big brother, the PIF. Technically, we represent roughly about 59% of their overall portfolio, and they have, give or take, you can see just over about 1 billion in shares for us. The average share price, $23.25, I don't believe is correct based on Fintel, but still, that aside, they do have just over about 1 billion shares of us. So we are a very big stake for them. And not only that, we're part of the Saudi Arabia vision, 2030 vision, so they will not let us fail. Worst case scenario, they'll just be able to, most likely, in my own opinion, provide us with a very low interest loan for X amount of time period, whether it be 10, 15 years, similar to what they offered given for their actual facility, which in general is fairly good. So yes, Lucid might get a little bit more debt in the future, but again, for those that actually research and know exactly where this debt is originating from, it's very low cost and long-term debt. So at the end of the day, it's not really something to worry about, my own 2 cents. And even looking at some of the numbers right now, so based on the actual solvency of Lucid, given the circumstances, all these numbers are well within a healthy range. So you can see it's total debt versus capital, 37.6. This was most recent as of the Q2. It did go up a little bit, but generally anything below 45% is fairly healthy. That's my own 2 cents on how I see things. Of course, it could be extended because Lucid is a growth stock, and that has its own separate kind of entities and separate kind of variances, if you want to call it that. So it potentially could be pushed to around 50%, but still 37.6% for the total debt over capital is fairly good. Even some other attributes as well, long-term debt over capital, 37.3%, total liabilities over total assets, 48%. So in reality, that figure could be pushed to roughly about 60, possibly even 70% before anything starts to, that's most likely when they talk on dilution, if that is the case or ever does be the case. So again, at the end of the day, I strongly feel Lucid is not going to go down the bankruptcy route. If it does, it will be 2025, possibly longer. And again, for that to happen, nothing will have gone right for Lucid. They probably would have canceled the Gravity, they canceled the Saudi Arabia facility, or even it just gets pushed back until maybe 2030. I don't know. There's a worst case scenario. That is where bankruptcy will happen. So keep in mind, when Lucid goes down, a lot of the bears come out and start to talk on bankruptcy, because especially based on the Q2 earnings, to be fully fair, it was really bad earnings. There's a lot of negatives that was brought from that, some positives, but again, you have to be a little bit more of a straight investor to understand the positives from the recent earnings. Majority of investors just see it as a very big negative. So at the end of the day, it's one of those things that there's an opportunity for bears to get into people's minds, and they take that and they talk on bankruptcy. And just want to show you this as well. So as far as the bankruptcy risk, the ultimate Z score, so you can see right here, based on the recent earnings, it was 4.04. Typically anything around the 1 range is a fairly high risk of bankruptcy, or if not lower. So you can see technically in Q2 2021, the risk was definitely there for bankruptcy, possibly, given that circumstances and their finances at the time. But since then, we have gone up significantly. So it's one of those things that you just have to stop listening to all the bears, realize that we do have a very good product. Things are going to go wrong. I'm not going to lie. Most likely there's going to be a lot more negative things in the future as well. Yeah, it's just being realistic. That's what a typical company does. And we are in the first year of operation. I think a lot of people need to take a step back, realize that Lucid has a very good product, a good management team. And I think the overall negative of Lucid was that it got compared to Tesla straight out the gate. Almost before it produced any vehicles, it was being compared to Tesla. So it immediately was put on this this pedestal, which makes it have a very high expectation. And typically when you have high expectations on someone or a company and they don't fulfill those expectations, it just hurts so much more, and you see it in a little bit more of a negative light. So that's my own 2 cents on how things are going. But again, let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below. If you do strongly feel that bankruptcy is imminent and can't change how it's going, let me know your thoughts on all of that in the comments below. But generally speaking, I think it won't be coming. If it does, it'll be 2026 plus, or possibly even longer. And even for that to happen, I personally feel that a lot of things would have to have gone wrong for that to happen. I know I said that many times, but I just want to ingrain that in your head, that worst case scenario, even still by 2026, most likely bankruptcy won't be an option. So whatever, it is what it is. There's going to be a lot of bears, and typically if there was no bears out there, every stock would just go up 1,000% every single day. So they are somewhat needed at the end of the day. So with all that, I appreciate you guys watching. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I greatly appreciate that. But with all that said though, let's all make a lot of money on Lucid.